The losing streak is over. Finally, the Hornets get a win. What did Brandon Miller do in the victory? What does this mean going forward? We'll break it all down today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free. We are available anywhere you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate them as always. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, and new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Plus, your favorite podcast, Locked On Hornets. We now have a newsletter introducing the Locked On Hornets daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. There's the man who writes them, Doug Branson, if you're watching on YouTube. EveryHornetsBoxScore.com. He's also writing for his Substack. He's also writing text messages to you in the subtext. And he's also hosting another pod, Locked On NBA with Hayes and Matt Moore. He's doing a lot. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. I am not writing. I will write some tweets, but that is about it. You can follow me when I do write my tweets at Walker Mail. All right, the Hornets, Doug, they get a win. It was
Let's
needed.
Go.
It was needed. 113 to 109. They beat the Pacers. It was on the road. They tried to give it up. They did the fun little thing where they can't get it into the front court. That's a fun game to play. They still get the outright win, though, which is nice. And this was after an 8-game losing streak. That was not nice for how many games they had lost in a row. What were your thoughts on the game? Where do you want to start here? If you are steering the ship, do we go Brandon Miller? Do we just go overall the feeling? Deep breath of getting a win. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think you could put this win firmly in the category of a win's a win. When you're on a losing streak, you can't, beggars can't be choosy. You can do all of those things with this win. I think that's the easy play there. I think we should start with Brandon Miller, who was great in the clutch, scored 11 of his 26 in the fourth quarter. But I want to do the thing that we probably should have done a couple of shows ago, which is start with the crazy play that everyone was talking about, which is his dunk in the fourth quarter, which was just incredible, powerful stuff, splitting the double team, and he is getting double teamed after double teamed after double teamed in these games, and he's fed up with it, so he splits this double team, and he takes it out on the rim. It was an incredible dunk, and he has had so many dunks. I put this on Blue Sky, but I didn't know this, but the NBA is scoring dunks in a way that is very in-depth. They give it an overall score that's based on how high you jump, how powerful it is, style, vertical, if it's contested. I mean, it's so in-depth on dunks here on NBA.com. And Brandon Miller, for a time there, had like a top 11 dunk in all categories. And they were from all different games.
Yeah.
Like, he has just been yamming all over the place this season.
So that was the one thing coming out of college, too, with all the talk about his athleticism, more in the short area burst, could he get around guys consistently? He would catch bodies at Alabama quite a bit. And so when you saw him this category, if I had to guess where he ranks the highest with this specific dunk against Indiana, the double team split. So if there is an initial drive, if there's an initial moment, he's pretty high in that category if that one exists on the NBA.com, wherever they're measuring him. But also the distance in which he takes off, the flight. It is really just within a step, maybe like the second hash mark away from the free throw line. And then he brings it back and then yams it home. Brandon does give you the fun dunk there. Also, some pretty critical buckets down the stretch. He was 9 of 18 from the field. Doug, he was 4 of 9 from distance, shot 5 free throws, made 4 of them. 26 points he ends up with. Turnovers, saw an uptick there once more after having a few games in a row where he had the 0 turnover game a few games back, 1 turnover game a few games back. Those were up again. Still, Brandon Miller, in the clutch once more. Like LaMelo Ball was statistically the best fourth quarter player in the NBA for a while, and then of course he gets hurt. But Brandon also shows you very clutch player. He's won games because of his scoring in the fourth and in overtime, and here he also comes up big.
Yeah, and it's particularly nice to see because teams are making him the focus. Opposing teams are making him the focus and trying to take him out of a rhythm. So it's good growth for him to see that, to face that, to be somewhat out of rhythm and frustrated to begin a game and then focus up in the fourth quarter when the team needs you most. And he is frustrated. I mean, there was a play there where, there was a sequence of plays where he would get double teamed, the ball would be forced out of his hands, and it would go to Isaiah Wong, who's played well, or would go to Cody Martin, or would go to Josh Green, and the play would go nowhere after that. And you could just see the frustration building for Brandon Miller. It's like, all right, they're taking the ball out of my hand, I give it to somebody, and they can't go make a play, and we're starting to lose this lead. And it led to this moment, and I don't know if you caught this, Walker, on the broadcast, but it led to this moment where he gives the ball to Wong after one of these double teams, and then just sort of fades off into the corner and doesn't come back to help Wong when Wong loses his dribble, and the Hornets turn it over, and then it results in a corner three that I think Brandon was supposed to be defending, but kind of jogged back up the court a little too slowly. Corner three, timeout Hornets, and Charles Lee was laying into Brandon Miller on the sideline like that. And the broadcast, shout out to the broadcast who did not shy away from it. They were zoomed in on it, and those two were, now it was Lee going after Brandon, who was like, all right, I'm, cool, and walking away. But frustration for Brandon Miller, and so this is the growth point. He's got to make sure that he doesn't let that leak into other parts of his game.
Well, of course he doesn't. Let's set up camp there for a moment, though, where Brandon Miller is asking where Charles Lee is asking what Brandon Miller is doing. What'd you think about the interaction? Like, I think Charles will let you know, even as a star player, he is showing consistency. He is showing if LaMelo does it, I'm going to have a problem with it. He might even get benched. And I'm definitely going to get frustrated. Brandon Miller not getting benched in this moment. Don't know if it was a consistent enough issue for Brandon, but there was certainly something enough for Charles Lee to go out onto the court almost. Like, it was pretty out there and say, what the hell are you doing? And Brandon got frustrated back. Like, this is the type of public coaching. I wonder how long it continues. If this is this is a first year, we're figuring each other out, but I need you to do these certain things. I don't think that kind of quality leaves Charles in his third year as a head coach. I don't know if he continues to do it when LaMelo's in his 7th or 8th season, hopefully, that he's still in a Hornets uniform. Is he still doing it with Brandon Miller playing his 4th season, hopefully, in a Hornets uniform? But I am interested in the dynamic that he has with LaMelo and Brandon, because everybody's figuring each other out right now before you're still a pretty decent way from the midway point.
I just don't think you see this very much in the NBA, particularly with losing teams. Now, I think there are a few instances I've seen Michael Malone do this in Denver. I'm trying to think of some other instances. Pop will occasionally, get into a guy publicly, but those are winning teams. You don't typically see this in teams that aren't being competitive for playoffs. But Charles Lee has set up a very competitive environment, and an environment that is about accountability and is about doing the right things all the time. Everything matters. All of this has been set up publicly. And so one has to think that that's the kind of thing that's happening in practice. He's not afraid to go after anyone in practice. And we've seen some behind the scenes stuff, going into summer league, where right away he was not afraid to tell Brandon Miller, Nick Smith Jr., hey, not good enough on defense. Got to have you doing these things, X, Y, and Z. And so the question is, can the personnel handle that? Because guys, they have, they're professional basketball players. They're making a lot of money. They have egos. And so I wouldn't even say some guys, a lot of guys really can't handle that. I think Brandon's the kind of player who wants to be great so badly and is hyper competitive. LaMelo Ball, same way. I actually think these are two guys that can handle that. But to your point, for a little while, that kind of thing will grow stale if the Hornets don't win in the next season.
Yeah, especially now with Brandon, because Brandon can't be applauded for it when he's shouting at vets as a rookie and then not be able to take it in return from the coach. That's not going to happen. And I don't think Brandon is. And I think Brandon is accepting this and has a great relationship with Charles Lee and everybody in the building. That this was fun. Brandon showed up in winning time. They actually did win the basketball game. Hard coaching. Vasa Micic showed up. Let's get to the other observations. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
I saw Doug get excited, folks. He's got a good take. He has a good point. We'll get to that in just a moment. Plus, Vasa Micic's performance. What are we seeing from him? And then all the guards that Charles Lee is throwing out there. Isaiah Wong, you get some time. DaQuan Jeffries, you're back from injury. You get some time.
All of a sudden, I guess.
I guess we're just going to throw like all the guards, all the players that haven't played at all. So we'll get to plenty of observations coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never really what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. But with Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month, when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment required. That's equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds and slower above to 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. More Locked On Hornets ahead. You got excited about a take, and then I ended the segment, Doug. What was your point? I did not mean to take away whatever point you had at the end of that one.
Well, I just remembered that. So that 3 was allowed, and before the 3 was allowed, when Brandon and Lee got into it, they cut to Lee, who seemed to signal like, Josh, come here, like he was about to take Brandon Miller out of the game, right? And then the 3 happens, they call the timeout. Brandon stays in the game. So whatever occurred in that conversation, and then when things cooled down and went back to the bench, I think that's where you're seeing like, look, things get heated, and then they can figure it out on the sideline, and we move on. And it was great because had he benched Brandon Miller in that moment, I don't know that they would have. It looked like Indiana had all the momentum at that point. This could have been another Brooklyn Nets situation where they lose the game, you bench your best player, and everybody looks at Charles Lee like, what the hell? What are you doing? So
do you do it again? God.
Right. So he came to his senses and said, all right, let's cool down here. Let's, figure this out. Let's go win this ball game. And it's a different situation, right? Because they lost 7 in a row. Like, you got to win that ball game when you have an opportunity to, and you almost threw it away because, as you said, inbounds, getting across the half-court line, still an issue. And Indiana really good at pressing. They've been pressing all season long, so that wasn't a surprise. They should have been a little bit more prepared for that because that didn't come out of nowhere. So, again, this team is severely shorthanded. They've still got a lot of things to work on. And I think Brandon Miller, if you go back to the Cleveland game, I wrote this in my notes, I don't think he's looking like himself lately, except for that fourth quarter, because he misses his first 5 shots against Cleveland. Again, they're putting so much pressure on him. He finished 3 of 13 from 3 in that game against Cleveland, constantly challenged by not only double teams, but guys are getting into him. They're being physical with Brandon Miller because they're like, they're challenging him. They're saying, you're not going to push us around, so we're going to push you around. And I think you're starting to see the effects of that because, again, Brandon can't pass it and be super confident that a great play is going to happen. And that's got to be frustrating for a player that wants to win so badly, knows he's a big part of that, can't be a big part of that because teams know they can take him away.
Okay, other game observations. Let's go weekend observations. This was a back-to-back that the Hornets were on this weekend. They lose to the Cavs, great basketball team. They're 21. I don't even know if they played yesterday, but they have over 20 wins, only 3 losses at the time of this meeting with Charlotte. The Hornets lose to Cleveland 116-102, and then they get the win on the road against the Pacers, which was nice to see. I say we go Vasa Micic next because, Doug, he's starting to figure it out quite a bit after having what was really a loathsome beginning of the season. Same thing in Summer League. It was terrible. It was no good. We're looking at 3 straight games for Micic where he's in double digits and he's shooting above 46% from the field and he's shooting above 40% from 3. Plus the turnovers, there were 5 in this game, but more usage, more minutes for Vasa. Only 2 a pop in the games against Cleveland and New York. And those were the 3 contests that he played over 30 minutes. When Micic talked after this contest, he was asked what the difference was.
Yes.
And he said minutes.
I noticed. Yeah, I noticed this too.
He said minutes. He said, and then he went on to like some more understandable comments. He talked about honestly, I forget what it was. I remember liking the comment after that, but seeing the first part of minutes, it's minutes how I'm being able to do this.
Incredible.
Loud and clear, Vasa. Loud and clear. But he's earned them, I guess, with the way that he's played the last 3 games, Doug.
Certainly. I mean, he's not turning it over at an historic rate. He's hitting his 3-point shots, but I think he's looking to pass first and then using those opportunities, like when he's running sets with Brandon Miller and the defense decides to shade Miller. He's open for 3 and he's taking those and he's making those. And it couldn't come at a more perfect time, Walker, because there is a trade scenario that we've talked a lot about with Vasa Micic. And that is Vasa Micic to the Denver Nuggets to go play with his buddy Nikola Jokic in exchange for Zeke Naji, a power forward. Well, what do the Hornets need right now?
That'd be great.
Grant Williams, ACL tear, Tijon Salan, ankle injury. No idea when he's going to be back. He's been his street closed for the past couple of games. They're playing DaQuan Jeffries, who, checking my notes here, is not a center. They're playing him at center for an unreasonable amount of minutes.
But he can shoot, Doug. Can you just?
Right.
That's something we didn't, I think, calculate for. Okay, if they need a shooting center, did they just put anybody down there if they could shoot? So maybe that's the way they answer the question.
But this deal is making more and more sense because you look again, Denver, they're completely out of sorts. They've got to do something. I don't know, if Micic, I don't know exactly what that would do for them. I mean, maybe it allows you to play Russell Westbrook less, or play him in the starting lineup and move Murray to the bench and then have Vasa at the bench. I don't know what it does for them, but they've got to do something, and their options are limited because of where their situation is apron-wise. So this just makes so much sense because they're weird. They're losing to Washington, but they're putting up 141 points. They need another playmaker. Like, it's all running through Nikola, so maybe that's what it does for them. It just gives them another playmaker in Vasa. So, yeah, I mean, I just think the Hornets got to pick up the phone now and revisit this deal because it makes too much sense.
Plus, especially right with Denver reeling a little bit, they did beat the Hawks. It took a 48-point effort for Jokic for the Nuggets to beat Atlanta.
That's insane.
But even still, Denver at 12-10, that's not going to get the job done. And all the offseason concerns about losing KCP and whether they would be able to carry their momentum from a championship into this year with Jamal Murray, whatever, right? Like, Jamal Murray hasn't been nearly as good. So maybe they go after Micic and you put the pressure on him because they have pressure to be a championship contender. So now, I mean, it takes a couple second rounders here. I wouldn't feel comfortable going straight up Micic for Zeke Naji because at least now that you have, even with his struggles, like Micic, he's playing 30 minutes a night at least at this given time, and he's playing pretty well. So would you get a couple second rounders alongside a Naji in exchange for Micic? I think that's what kind of deal you'd be talking about. But still, Doug, like, I guess this is the question. I was asked this question doing a pregame hit for their game yesterday. Is Micic still the most likely player to get dealt at the deadline? Because I still think yes, and I think his performance may even enhance that chance of happening.
Oh, well, it's facilitated that chance from because I think otherwise it would have been very difficult to move him because teams are, I don't know how interested teams are going to be anyway. But then to put onto that how he performed, I mean, teams do scout this. They do watch this. They do look at stats. I mean, even if they don't watch the games, they could look at the stats easily from those first few contests for Vasa and say, what the heck happened? So absolutely. And I should have been clear. Yes, it makes even more sense now, the Najee deal, because of what they're dealing with power forward wise. But he's not going to move. It's a perfect deal because he's not going to move the needle for them. Zeke Najee's not going to turn them into a winning team, but he turns them into a functional basketball team where you can evaluate other guys and you can play guys in their correct position. And on top of that, yes, you have to get multiple second round picks, maybe even like a future first round pick where you're betting on Denver to blow it all up at some point down the line. That's what it would take, I think, to facilitate that kind of deal to happen. And you can put the pressure on Denver. But yes, Micic, absolutely. Still, the minutes comment, I love that. It's just
it's great.
The dude wants to play. He thinks he can be like a starting point guard on a great team, and that's what he wants. And he's not going to be satisfied with anything less. They should get this deal done before LaMelo Ball comes back. Because if LaMelo Ball comes back and he's reduced down to 8, 9, 10 minutes a game, he's probably going to revert right back to the horrible Vasa Micic that we saw at the beginning of the season.
This reminds me of the Terry Rozier conversation when he was traded to Charlotte, and everybody's defense of Terry at the time. It was much maligned, that trade was, but the defense of Terry was, hey guys, look at what Terry does with starters minutes. He's actually a good player, and it did carry out for a long time here. So maybe Micic just needs to start somewhere, and that's how he becomes a good basketball player consistently. But yeah, after losing to Minnesota last year, not getting to the championship, and then this year 12-10 record, maybe you can press Denver for some interesting assets. Let's move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Got some Sicko Satchel questions / comments to get to. Maybe we rapid fire some observations as well from this game against the Pacers. Go back to Cleveland, revisit that in just a moment. That's still to come. Last segment, LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and you can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, Doug, I picked Micic last segment. Where do you want to go with some Cleveland thoughts, some more Pacers thoughts from last night?
I was just talking about Isaiah Wong. I mean, he's getting some minutes here. Was a recent acquisition from Utah's G League affiliate. We knew he was a shot maker, but I've been impressed, and I shouldn't be surprised that he's really active on the defensive end of the floor, because that's the only kind of player who's active on defense and also just giving 100% effort in all areas of the game. That's the only kind of player that Jeff Peterson goes after these days. So Isaiah Wong has been that. He's really aggressive, trying to go after steals, and it led to a powerful two-handed dunk in that Cleveland game. And we talked about the one from Brandon against Indiana, but Isaiah had a huge dunk as well in that game. He's relentless, and it's been fun to watch him play. He obviously, he looks like kind of a fringe G League NBA guy when it comes to just like handling an offense, handling the basketball. But he's knocked down shots, and he's been a second half player for the Charlotte Hornets in a game that they lost close to Cleveland. I mean, the score doesn't indicate that because there was a little, kind of foul game at the end, but that was a close game. And then in a close win in Indiana, he also performed well.
Well, and I think it's still, even, yes, I know you said you shouldn't be surprised. I get the spirit of the comment, but also I think it's okay to be surprised because this is his third NBA game ever we saw against Indiana. He's not played much. That's the thing. Like, even you have more experience with Nick Smith Jr. You have more experience. I guess, yeah, KJ Simpson would have had more NBA games. KJ Simpson would have had more NBA games than Isaiah Wong coming into yesterday's contest. But you're right. He has looked good. But, Doug, this was a little bit of the scouting report. Older player coming out of Miami. Had already figured some stuff out. And while there just wasn't a lot of room in Indiana, we saw what TJ McConnell can do. Good God, 30 points for McConnell, a defensive menace. They have Tyrese Halliburton up there. They have bigger guards, too. And eventually Wong just falls out of favor with the Indiana organization. You need some guards down here with LaMelo and Trey out. So, hey, nice job, Isaiah. Like, he's been a fun player to watch. Get to the rim, had the fun layup where he gets fouled, and then he's moving different levels of basketball, clearly. In high school, I hated the little guards that would always, move their basketball around, and I couldn't swat it. Here I am standing a foot taller than them, but they move the basketball all over the place, and I can't just get a hand to the ball. And then, of course, it goes up, and they get the shot to go in. That's what happened with Wong last night. They just couldn't swat it because he's moving it all over the place.
Yeah, and it leads into this question that we have from the Sicko Satchel. I open it up, by the way. If you want to get your question in, you still can. Join subtext.com/Locked On Hornets 14-day free trial. This one from Casual Hindu of the 1st Lance Stevenson division in the Sicko Brigade. And they want to know, two-part question. One, has Jeff Peterson been on a heater or what? Diabate, Wong, Jeffries. He's found so many gems, and Charles Lee is getting these guys to buy in and actually compete. This isn't normal, right? I'm not crazy. No, you're just sick. You're not crazy.
No, you're in the Lance Stevenson division. You're just sick.
So, you might be crazy too. Then.
Yeah, maybe.
Number two, what if any decisions has Jeff made so far that have been bad or questionable in your opinion, or maybe he really is just perfect?
Well, this is the issue though. This offseason, we said this. There is not a decision that I remember Jeff Peterson making that I remember just criticizing to no end or thinking that, hey, I'm actually out on this move more so than I'm in on it. Honestly, the most questionable decision, Doug, might come in the form of selecting Tijan Salon at 6 overall with a guy like Klingon there, with the option to trade up for Reed Shepherd, even though Reed is not actually blowing it away. I think it's hard to come by minutes down there in Houston. Same thing with the Connect. I know it was linked to Charlotte for quite some time, but a lot of teams passed up on Connect. 9 other teams passed up on Connect. I think that was the most questionable decision, but I'm not looking in hindsight. I'm not looking right now and saying, good God, Jeff really missed it with that one. Yeah, I can't think of, to answer the second question first, I can't think of a move that I was really frustrated by, carried out by Jeff this offseason.
No, and I think for the Castle and the Reed Shepherd pick, that would have taken a king's ransom.
Yeah.
And then you're betting on, that has to be right, because if Reed Shepherd or Castle don't work out in that scenario, then you've mortgaged your entire future and you've really set the Hornets back maybe another decade. So I'm okay with him not taking that risk, particularly when they needed a season to evaluate what they had and what they didn't have. Now, they haven't got that opportunity yet. Hopefully they do get these guys healthy and back and they can see that. But I'm okay with them not taking that risk because I think all the reporting said Houston wanted a ton to move up to 3 and no other team was willing to give that up either. And so with the Klingon, we've talked about Klingon, Tijan, it's all about how you view this season. If you really wanted to make the play-in no matter what, then Klingon was the obvious pick. If you align more with ownership that, this is the second inning of a 9-inning ball game, this is a long-term play, then Tijan makes a lot of sense. And he's shown a little bit of that actually, the things that they thought about Tijan and said, we've seen them. And so those are good indicators that he may have gotten that one right. So I'm with you. I can't think of it. And look, there are all kinds of Isaiah Wongs and DaQuan Jeffries and Diabates hanging around the G League. And it's just it takes GMs picking those guys out and saying, ooh, I like what they can bring, and I think it would fit our organization. And then for those players to have opportunities for that to happen. We've seen Miami do that time after time after time, bringing in these folks from the G League and turning them in to really good players. The Hornets, I think, have been reluctant to do that, more obsessed with their own system and proving like, oh, what we're doing with the Swarm is right. And so they haven't looked at opportunities to go get an Isaiah Wong from some other teams. And this is what I was screaming from the rooftop for years. We need creativity in the front office. Think outside the box. Think outside your own system. Be able to go out there and scout other players. That's what's happening right now. And you're right, Casual Hindu. This isn't normal for the Hornets, but this is normal for other teams. Other good organizations can do this, and they do it consistently, and that's what you're starting to see be established here with Jeff Peterson. Now, final caveat, we have not seen Jeff Peterson make the big move yet. They are acquiring assets, and eventually they've got to make the big move, and they've got to do what the past organization couldn't do, which is get into conversations with guys like Donovan Mitchell and actually get the deal done. So that's a TBD on that evaluation of Jeff Peterson.
So again, just continuing the second part of that question, you brought up Miami. We have to figure out if these players are for real and other teams want them and they get to a second contract, because we haven't done that yet with any of these guys. So little time. But I think when it becomes real is when Miami turns Duncan Robinson into a $20 million a year type guy. It's when they turn Caleb Martin, a guy we could not turn into that player. When they turn Caleb Martin into somebody that should have gotten more money on the open market and already got a decent chunk of change out there on the open market. Same thing with here I am going like a Tyler Johnson back in the day, but there's so many of these dudes that come out of nowhere. Is it real or not? That's the question. Or is it just that they're getting opportunity with a bad team? They're making plays on a team that loses still a lot of games. And I think for the most part, the evidence stacks up more so in the latter. We can love Isaiah Wong. We can like Jeffries hitting shots. That stuff matters. But does that happen with the teams that you would consider top 20 franchises in the league right now? I don't know. But that's not to rain on the parade of what these guys are doing.
No, but I think what Wong and Jeffries and Diabate before him were doing, were saying, you can trust me if those opportunities present themselves in the future when your other players get healthy. But you're so right. You can't fairly evaluate what Wong and Jeffries and Diabate and these guys are doing until you put them with a full complement of players that can play well. Like Duncan Robinson was still great when Jimmy Butler was healthy, when Tyler Hero was healthy. So that's what you have to see from Wong and Jeffries. But for now, you can just sit and enjoy the 100% effort that they're giving. They're keeping, Jeffries, what he's doing to go from not playing the entire season to being inserted in the lineup and saying, okay, I know you're kind of like a guard forward combo, but now we need you to go play center. And it's just like, to think about how difficult that is to like, okay, I've got to figure out where I'm supposed to be on the court because I've been in this rhythm my whole career of doing X, Y, and Z, and now I've got to go play center. That's really difficult to do, and he's done it admirably in the minutes that he's had to do it. So shout out to these guys.
Yeah, one last point. I think Jeff Peterson is getting credit for him. Maybe we give Charles Lee some credit too.
Oh, yeah.
So Charles Lee, I think one thing we're starting to learn about Charles is he does play conceptually. He does have a system where guys are able to do what they do best, and he puts them in those positions. For instance, if DaQuan Jeffries can shoot, well, let's put him in situations where guys will sag off of him, and he'll get open looks at a standstill. So maybe you put him at center, and these big guys are a little more comfortable closer to the basket, and then he just has standstill threes. Okay, Isaiah Wong, not a great shooter in college, got better at Miami, but Isaiah Wong's game is taking you off the dribble and getting to the rack and seeing what can fall. All right, well, let's create some space. Let's get in Isaiah Wong's ear and tell him to drive and put that ball on the deck. He did hit a three against Indiana, but that was when the defender was sagging off, and it was even a delayed response. He's dribbling to the right, takes it from the wing, and nice shot from Isaiah. With Moussa Diabate, what does he do well? He rebounds the hell out of the basketball. So just go be a wild man. We'll throw you some lobs every now and then, set hard screens. When you catch the rebound, usually look for someone else and kick it out. It's just a classic do your job, to use an old football adage. But it does feel like Charles Lee is putting these guys in the right situation to do what they do well. And what was Charles Lee doing a lot of at Milwaukee? And I don't know as much in Boston, but I have to imagine this was part of the job description. He was scout. He was coming up with the scout and then relaying that message to the other team or to the members of the team. So I imagine he does have a pretty good scouting report on what some of these younger players, some of these players we haven't seen a lot of, what they do well. I just think Charles deserves some credit in that regard too. If they haven't been working out elsewhere and they're working out here, even if it's in the meantime, shout out to both of these decision makers, which makes you happy, Doug. It makes you happy going in the right direction. Anything else?
Final take from the Indiana game. TJ McConnell, I hate you.
God. So I'm working on this theory with TJ McConnell.
Okay.
Remember the curse of the guarantee against Philly all the way back when Nick Batum guaranteed they would beat the process 76ers. Mm-hmm. They would lose that night. And then after like one win afterwards, they lost 17, 18 straight. It was something ridiculous. Who was it that had the post-game interview after the Philly process game? It was TJ McConnell, who was frustrated as hell, mean mugging the camera, mean mugging the reporter, saying, you're not just going to come in and guarantee a victory against us. They were pissed off. I wonder if TJ McConnell, just somewhere you can find the chip on the shoulder, the player that isn't thought of to be very much. He has these manufactured chips everywhere. Lay's, Doritos, they're all over himself. I wonder if he manufactured even more so a chip against Charlotte to where he just balls out against this specific team because of the guarantee that was made by Nick Batum back in like 2017 or so. That's the theory I'm rolling with.
Nick Batum, when will you stop haunting us?
I think
why did you created a monster and then you left? And, oh my God.
Oh man, yeah, he created TJ McConnell, that monster. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. That does include YouTube. Make sure you're checking out Doug's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. We have a daily newsletter, lockedondaily.com. Check out that newsletter and follow Doug on Blue Sky. Doug Branson, Blue Sky. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.